Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Hello, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome to bout number 77 of the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom Haggis.
Okay, seriously, I didn't know we were started. My mic's not hooked up, but hi, everybody. What the fuck? Let's start. You didn't say anything. Go ahead. Introduce everybody else while I'm getting this set up.
Second, writer, actor, and director, Kyle Fine.
Tonight's episode, kids, is sponsored by the letters L, S, and D, and the number 206, which is how much time I wasted watching these movies.
Third, filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short Productions, Gabriel Rowald.
I am comfortably numb.
Nice. Fourth, writer, actor, and producer, Tosh Dillinger.
I wish I would put a black box on my head and wander around a beach more than watching these films.
that was a little weird. That was
a
little weird. Yeah.
What a subtle metaphor.
So many weird moments to point out too.
Yes,
All right.
There are. All right. Well, before we spoil anything, let me poke the monkey.
Ladies and gentlemen, pinball wizards and bricks in the wall, welcome to the main event! Tonight, we bring you a melee of musical medleys to find out who will embark on an amazing journey and who will become comfortably numb. In the first quarter, from 1975, written by The Who, directed by Ken Russell, starring Oliver Reed and Margaret and Roger Daltrey. Tommy! In the second quarter, from 1982, written by Roger Waters, directed by Alan Parker, starring Bob Geldof, Christine Hargrave, and James Lawrenson. Pink Floyd, The Wall!
We've been talking for about 45 minutes before we started recording, and I was really looking forward to this. I will say that Tommy gets a little long in the tooth for me, but I love The Wall. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and ring the bell, and we'll start off with writing.
Well, I think for writing, it's interesting with movies like this because we need to kind of incorporate the whole musical aspect of it as well, writing of the music. But I have to say, before we get going, that I'm having a little bit of bullet bourbon right now, and I am comfortably numb. But I think in order to understand these movies, I probably should be doing a line of Coke, maybe a little LSD like Kyle suggested.
Or acid.
Because, I'm not quite sure I followed these entirely. And I have to admit that I'm not sure I would have gotten everything out of The Wall had I not read other people's synopses on what it was about. I'm not sure I would have gotten it all just from the movie alone. And one of the things about these kinds of movies is when they rely on the lyrics of a song to portray some of the meaning to people. we better be able to understand the lyrics. And a lot of times in rock songs, well, really, I mean, a lot of times in rock songs,
you're right.
you can't understand the lyrics. And so I feel like a lot of the meaning gets past you unless you know the songs already, or you watch the movie several times, or listen to the songs later and go, oh, I get what that was about. So I don't know. It's hard. The writing part is hard because both of these come from previous works of music. But I'll have to say, for me, I felt like the music and the lyrics for Pink Floyd, The Wall, were more subtle and more intelligent than Tommy. I felt like the lyrics, a lot of the songs in Tommy were very sophomoric, just kind of really just telling you what's happening, just directly. And I didn't really find the songs all that compelling. I did, however, find it easier to follow, but I just didn't really find it all that well written, personally. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's a metaphor. All of it.
For both,
All of
for
it.
both
Everything. From the
Everything.
beginning to the end of all those movies, it's just a metaphor. It's a brilliant metaphor. Can we vote? Sorry.
You know,
Yeah,
I pictured.
sorry, go ahead, Tosh.
Oh no, so go. Okay. I pictured they were sitting around getting high, and I'm like, you know what would be awesome? You know how we could sell more records? And the guys don't know what, and he's like, what if we made shitty movies to our music? And they're like, yes. Are we high still? Yes. Let's make the movie, and that's how I think they wrote it. I really do. It's like let's make the shittiest possible movies possible. Done.
And they made a ton of money. I mean,
I know.
Was
Yeah,
it
these
Tommy?
are not cheap movies either. Like they had
No.
big budgets.
Yeah, Tommy was like $5 million, and it made $35 million. It was in the theater for a
Yeah.
year.
That's
That's
crazy.
nuts. The
That
people.
would never
maybe it was a
happens
time
anymore.
period. Maybe it appealed to people in that time period because they probably were high on
Yeah,
whatever
so-
when they went into the theater.
There's not from the lot from the 70s that I'm fond of. You know, there's a couple of movies and some people that were born. That's about it. It was a pretty shitty decade. The fashion sucked. The music mostly sucked. The movies really sucked. And it was a
But
horrible.
we got things
horrible
like Star Wars and stuff. in
we
the
got Star
70s.
Wars and
late
Jaws,
70s.
Spielberg out
Jaws.
of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
True, but dear Lord, I watch like American Hustle and I go, oh, I don't think I would have made it to 79. I've been like, fuck it, I'm out of here.
So I'm not a particular fan really of either of these bands, but I think, you know, and maybe Mike can speak to this, knowing the source material better may help you get a lot more out of these movies. I felt a little bit lost. I felt either the metaphors were so heavy-handed that they weren't elegant and like interesting, or they were so obtuse that like I had no chance of grasping them because they were involved. You know, you had to be more involved in the music and the band and the time period, and it may be one of those things too. Is it's like, you know, I'm not high watching this. Maybe it makes a lot more sense because there's a lot of psychedelic imagery to the movies and a lot of. And I was kind of struck by how similar some of the aspects of both movies were. They both deal with war quite a bit. Both deal with a main character who's basically introverted and can't perceive things. I really couldn't believe like the first 10 minutes of watching The Wall. You know, they have this whole war scene and all this shit. I'm like, oh my god, it's like the start of Tommy again.
Yeah.
It's really crazy how close they are. But Mike, do you think knowing the music better helps you appreciate these? Because I've only listened to The Wall maybe once or twice, and I don't think I've ever listened to anything from Tommy other than Pinball Wizard.
Well, I don't know if knowing the source material is better, but I can say from my standpoint, you know, we're talking about maybe the people needed to be high or whatnot. I'm not what you would call a drug user. I mean, I like my alcohol. Maybe I've had some marijuana in my time, but never really to watch The Wall or even listen to Floyd. I don't think I've ever done that, either high or probably drunk. But for me, I love Pink Floyd's stuff because of the instrumentals, because of some of the lyrics. it just, I don't know why, but I can visualize stuff way better with Floyd's music. But as far as The Wall is concerned, it is essentially the way I look at it is it's a tired rock star who is totally burnt out, and he starts to regress, and he starts looking back on his life and what all caused him to get here. You know, it was the overprotective mother. It was the father that died. It was the teacher that abused them in school. It was the ex-wife. And all these things come together, and the second half is when he is on the drugs, and he just essentially goes full bore after everything that's good in the world because of the bad. And he ends up tearing himself apart. And that's what the trial is all about, is he's built up this wall. He's keeping himself away from society where, you know, teachers do good. Mothers do love their children. You know, wives can love you, and, you know, you can be in love. And that's where he finally decides he's got to, you know, essentially, like the song, tear down the wall. And I just think it's this whole journey into his madness as a person, which we all deal with this stuff. And I think it's just thrown up there, and it's visualized and put in the song.
Yeah,
I am. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Gabe.
I was just gonna say, you know, like I said before, if I hadn't read other people's descriptions and kind of like synopses of this movie, I probably wouldn't have understood what it was about. You know, at what point do we realize that he's actually a rock star? I mean, you get kind of pictures of like rock star life type things, but I don't remember. Do we ever get a shot of him actually
playing? No, you don't.
Yeah,
you don't see him playing, but you hear
an instrument or singing or anything.
You hear the crowd when he's in the restroom. You know, you see the groupies.
Yeah.
It's
and we see the party with his manager,
right?
Bob Hoskins.
Bob Hoskins.
Right. Yeah,
Mario.
And the one thing that I want to point out too is, you know, like you said, the Who, Tommy is we're going to sing about this while we show it to you.
Yes.
Where
it's easier to follow in that respect.
Right. And but it just gets so heavy-handed at times where I don't know. I feel The Wall had a little more fantasy with it. Like, it kind of lets you make up your own decisions on certain things, which could be difficult for some people. But yeah, we're talking about writing. If we're talking about writing, we're talking about the albums. I would say The Wall is written better than Tommy, although there are a few songs on The Wall that I don't care for, and there are a few songs on Tommy that I really do like.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Tommy on stage in '96, and I hadn't seen the movie yet. And after watching this movie, I am more impressed with the stage show and what they were put together, because it completely blew me away. And it belongs on a live stage show, you know. And it's, I imagine if they did the movie nowadays, they'd do it in a different way. There'd be probably less metaphor to it, and it would be a little bit less, you know, beat you over the head with symbolism and everything. And so in that aspect, and the same thing with The Wall in terms of how great that album is, that both of these seem like they're like, let's make a movie when a movie isn't even probably the second best way to tell the story. Whereas with Tommy, I think with the Pink Floyd's best option is to keep it as an album, and for Tommy, it's the best on stage. I mean, just like going to the movie, it just seemed like both of them were out of place, and like, yeah, this doesn't really belong in a movie. So, and it was just, I mean, with Tommy, it was the problem is I've seen Tommy as a cohesive, easy enough to follow story that makes sense and is very emotional and very powerful. And then I watched this movie and I'm like, wow, this doesn't make. Why are the people burning down Tommy's camp again?
Yeah, yeah.
What?
They just kind of turn on him.
Yeah, it's like, and shit just starts happening, and I'm like, what? Why is why did they kill his parents? Like, Jesus, what kind of fucking riot is this?
Yeah, so weird.
And it just seems like they just like, let's make a movie, and there are other ways to get this story out. A book, for crying out loud, probably would have.
That's what I was thinking. Write a book.
But we're not allowed to talk. We're not allowed to say the B word on the podcast.
Yes, you are.
It is a podcast about movies, after all.
I will say, and we were talking, my least favorite Pink Floyd song, maybe because whenever I say I love Pink Floyd, everyone's first reaction is, oh, another brick in the wall. They start, we don't need no education. And I'm like, no, it's so overplayed. There are so many other good Floyd songs out there that you can play, but everyone just knows another brick in the wall, and it drives me crazy. And I think that's why I hate that song so much. Like,
Floyd wasn't a one-hit wonder?
No.
Oh, that's news to me.
Right.
What?
Imagine that. Coming from Tosh.
I thought that was the only song that was a hit.
Yeah, it was.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, go ahead. Why did I invite him onto the podcast again?
To give you hell. That's what I'm doing.
He's good.
I can change that real quick. All right.
If you want to lose, if you want to lose 10 people off the podcast every month,
I'm willing to take that chance.
That'd be like a third of our listeners.
I'm just glad to see the vitriol go in a different direction for a change. It's kind of nice.
All right. Does anyone want to add anything else to the writing? So we'll move on. All right.
Good.
Gabe.
Well, I'm going to base my vote on the actual music that was written for these, not necessarily what resulted in screenplays and that kind of thing. And I appreciate Pink Floyd's music much more than The Who, so I'm going to go with The Wall.
All right. Kyle.
I also am going to go with The Wall, and I do think that music is better written and serves more of a purpose to move the story along, whereas like Tommy is basically sings you from one scene to the next, which I think Tom has a great point about would be awesome in a stage show.
Tosh.
Oh, man. I don't want it to be clean sweep, so I'm going to go Tommy just because Tommy has to have a little love here.
All right. Tom.
And I'm going to go Tommy because I appreciate the story better.
Okay.
I think it's a better story than Tommy.
All right. Let's see here. The setting of the film, the subsequent 1990s musical version, which Tom was talking about, are different from the original version recorded by The Who and the 1972 version recorded with the London Symphony Orchestra. In the original version, the setting is just after World War I, and Tommy's mother's lover is murdered. In the film version, the setting is just after World War II, and Tommy's father is murdered. In the musical version, the setting is just after World War II, and Tommy's mother's lover is murdered. So try and figure that one out. The poetry in The Wall that young Pink was caught with during the happiest days of our lives is a combination of the first and second verses of Money off of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. Far from being absolute rubbish, this album stayed longer on the Billboard chart than any other album, more than 700 weeks.
Wow.
All right, let's move on to our second round, which is acting.
Acting. Wow.
Acting.
We'll start with Tommy, I guess. Yeah.
Go get him, Tiger. Go get him.
I think this is payback right here to give me one of the hardest categories. Acting was not good across either of these, really. I'm not going to spoil Kyle's revelation about the blind child. I'll let him talk about that. But
that was Gabe.
Oh, Gabe. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it was me.
So you got us confused, much like Blue Eyes and Brown Eyes.
Right.
That part? Were you talking about that part? You
So-
can spoil that. I don't care.
So when Tommy first started and like they're setting up the romance with Tommy's dad and mom, and like they're like doing romance, and it was like
Doing romance.
Doing romance.
It was
That is
like,
the perfect 2 words to describe what they were doing.
because they weren't
Doing
they had no chemistry whatsoever, and it was just awkward. And I was like, I texted Gabe, and I'm like, what the hell did Mike get us into with this? Because this is a start like this. I was like, oh, and it didn't get any better. It really didn't. Yeah, so Tommy sucked, and then you go to the wall, and they sucked as well. It was just, I don't know. It did not.
Yeah, and
it was a struggle. Like, and I even said, like, there's better acting performances in a 48-hour film project that we are all part of once in a while, and it's just like, man, I guess they save money on actors for the most part. It just seemed it was pretty amateur.
yeah, but Tommy, their approach for Tommy, I felt at first was, and maybe we should mention this in writing too, but it was approached more like a musical than than The Wall was. The Wall is more like we discussed earlier, kind of like a music video, and you don't get a lot of extra dialogue, and they're not necessarily, in most cases, they're not always singing along with the music in The Wall, but Tommy comes across very much like a musical, and they played it very campy, and I'm not sure that is necessarily, I don't know that necessarily results in bad acting. It's maybe a directorial choice that we could talk about later, but they had a lot of well-known actors and musicians in Tommy. They had a lot of cameos and stuff, which was pretty fun to see, kind of known faces. But I think the most important decision was, in Tommy, as who played Tommy. And I guess he was, again, it was like a musical, so he's singing along. So he makes from that respect, he makes the most logical choice. But from an acting standpoint, I don't know.
I thought it was interesting that the best songs in Tommy were the ones where it was the closest to the original album. Like, I mean, Pinball Wizard was okay, but it was still like, it still felt like an Elton John cover of it.
Well,
but when Roger
was.
Daltrey and when Roger Daltrey started singing like "I'm Free," I was like, oh my gosh, this is like straight off the album. This is, and it was one of the better songs on there because it was so true to the original album. Everything else was like people trying to sing it. And God help me, Oliver Reed. Fuck, just be quiet.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't have the trivia. I'm not using it for at the end, but I ran across it. He was really nervous about taking the role, and the only way that he could do all of his part singing when they were recording it was he could only sing for short bits. That's the only way. That's the only way he could keep his tune. Like, that's the only way he could keep it going, is he'd have to sing a few lines, then stop. Take a break, sing a few lines, and stop.
Right.
Well, it didn't work.
No.
He was absolutely garbage.
Yeah.
I feel like Anne Margaret is like the only one acting, like trying to act. And she was nominated for and won a Golden Globe for this.
She did.
Just so you guys know.
Yep.
Wow.
I like Anne Margaret.
I'm
for a
totally
couple
in love
different
with
reasons.
Anne Margaret.
That being said, I don't ever need to watch her roll around in a bath of baked beans again. But the chocolate and the suds, I thought the suds was hot.
Oh, that
Yeah.
was
Then
really
it just
hot.
gets
When it-
fucking
when it-
weird.
Yeah, when it gets to chocolate and baked beans, then it starts to look like something else, and it's like it's kind of not pleasant looking.
Like a German film.
yeah. So yeah.
So I think both of these movies were really hurt by not casting actors and putting the music over the top of it, because Roger Daltrey, right? Is that his name? Am I saying it right?
Roger Daltrey. Yep.
He is hot garbage. He is terrible. He stares for 90% of this movie, and I can't count the amount of times someone looks right down the barrel of the camera.
Yep, a lot.
It's so awkward to watch.
Yeah.
And I'll give him one thing, though. He's in really good shape, because there are times when he is just flat out sprinting and then singing and doing cartwheels and shit. And he doesn't seem to be scared of anything either, because he won't stop fucking climbing things.
Oh, I know. And he
If I was his
performance
manager,
was very
I would be-
physical.
yeah. If I was his manager, I'd be throwing a fit. Quit climbing the fucking mountain. You're a rock star.
Right.
But
Now-
oh my god, yeah, he doesn't seem to be afraid of doing any of that,
I-
including like the weird emotive singing and stuff. But man, I thought his performance was terrible. And I thought, what's their drummer, Keith Moon?
Mm-hmm.
He was just fucking bizarre. And Oliver Reed was really bad.
Keith Moon is Uncle Ernie.
yeah,
that was weird.
Yeah, a lighthearted musical number about molesting a
Yes.
a kid who has
Yeah.
no senses was a really weird choice.
Yes.
In The Wall, though, also they did not hire movie. Bob Geldof, it was a musician or a
Yep.
producer, something like that. So
He was
I
a
thought they were
musician.
really, they're really hurt by that too, because he can't carry this. I got almost no like emotion from him when he was sitting around. At some point, I just thought to myself, this just seems like an asshole being an asshole to other assholes. I didn't like feel bad for him, or he never like sucked me in. He's just sitting around like an asshole and being mean to everyone. And I'm like, dude, I don't get what happened. Like, it just didn't come across, and I just wasn't portrayed well. And can we just talk again how that guy with the scar on his face was just terrible? Man, what the fuck was he doing? So bizarre. It's just really bizarre choices.
Can you say that again? An asshole being an asshole.
An asshole to other
To
assholes.
other assholes.
Yeah,
Well,
that's fantastic.
Like, nobody was likable. There was no one to root for, and the only people who seemed to be okay were people who were getting shit on. Like, his wife or girlfriend or whatever seemed totally fine, and then he was just a dick to her and didn't pay any attention. Then she left, and he's all sad that she's fucking someone else. I'm like, well, you shouldn't have been an asshole.
So for Tommy, you bring up it's Anne Margaret, Elton John, Eric Clapton, Jack Nicholson, Tina Turner.
Oh, Tina Turner off the goddamn rails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew.
And that's not even mentioning the Who, Pete Townsend, Keith Moon, Roger Daltrey. But I wanted to bring up too, you said that he was very physical. I mean, the Who are very physical on stage. When they were performing, they were, jumping around, going crazy on stage. So, I mean, it's kind of fitting that you look at him, he's like super crazy fit. Yeah. I'm like, what have I done with my life? Like watching him run around, I'm like, I can't do that. There's no way. There's no way I'd be dead.
Well, and he definitely did put himself at times at risk of injury, I thought.
Yeah.
There's the part where
he's
stumbling through the junkyard when he first kind of comes across that pinball machine, and he's like, it's dark and he's stumbling around and he's knocking over this very real looking garbage and falling into it, and I'm like, he's going to get hurt. What, one of these cars is going to tip over, or a washing machine's going to land on him, and he's going to get hurt. And there's a part where he's getting sprayed by the fire hose. Yeah. I mean, that looked like he was really getting knocked down by the power of that fire hose. And I'm like, he's going to get hurt. And I would think that they wouldn't want that, considering.
Are we sure they didn't have a stunt lip syncer? Are we sure about that?
And to let you guys know, that was one of the first scenes they shot, with the fire hose and being pulled by his hair by the cousin,
really?
by cousin, what was his name? Cousin
Kevin.
Kevin. Yep.
Kevin.
He probably had a concussion from that scene, and then he was just fucked for the rest of the movie.
That's why he forgot to blink.
Yeah.
Anne Margaret has terrible judgment in people. She picks the wrong guy to get with after her husband dies. She picks the worst cousin to leave him with.
Yeah.
The guy has he has a swastika on his jacket.
Yeah.
Don't leave your children unattended with him. I mean, even if he has 25, don't leave him there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely messed up. Those two scenes made me very uncomfortable, especially, having a newborn son. I'm like, oh my God. All right, you guys ready to vote? Let's do it. Tosh.
Man. We'll go The Wall.
All right. Kyle.
I'm going to go for The Wall just because there wasn't anyone staring at me for an hour and a half.
Tom.
I'm going to go with The Wall because I don't remember any of the acting from The Wall.
There you go. And you can't say anything good about
I
the
remember
Tommy.
a lot of the acting from Tommy in a bad way. How about that?
All right. And Gabe.
I'm going to go with Tommy simply because of the cameos, which made it kind of fun to see familiar faces.
I will say I really liked Elton John as the pinball wizard. I don't know why. It was just funky Elton John on giant boots. It was just weird and I liked it.
He seems to get it though. Like
Yeah.
he just like has a natural charisma. He's not staring down the barrel of the camera. He actually acts like he's in the scene. Like I just feel like almost nobody else got that memo.
And also real quick, I mean, seeing Eric Clapton as the preacher, that was pretty fun. Tina Turner as Acid Queen. Kyle, you said it best. She went off the rails. Like she's
was mental. I mean, yeah she's crazy.
But Jack Nicholson as the specialist, like that was just
a
crazy.
little weird.
And
He's probably the least crazy acting person in this movie, and that is weird.
well,
And he had
is
to kind of sing a song.
I want to ask you guys: is it bad that I wanted Anne Margaret to leave Frank and go be with the specialist? Because I mean, he was making googly eyes at her, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're gonna end up together, and they didn't. But I'm just like, leave Oliver Reed, go with Jack.
I would support anything that gets less Oliver Reed in this movie.
All right, acting. In his autobiography, Is That It?, Bob Geldof says that his agent first told him about the project, The Wall, while he was riding in a taxi, and that he said that he didn't want to do it because he didn't like the music of Pink Floyd. Roger Waters knows this story, not because he read it in Geldof's book, but because the taxi driver was actually Roger Waters' brother. I find that kind of funny.
What's the likelihood of that?
Exactly.
Do they live in a small town or something?
I don't know.
You know?
Roger Waters must not have liked his brother. His brother should be rich enough not to have to drive taxis, right?
That's true, right?
I think so. How many brothers does he have?
I don't know.
Rod Stewart was originally intended to play the pinball wizard, but Elton John talked him out of it. John then took the part himself.
Stewart?
Yeah. Yeah. Stewart had played.
That's funny to me.
Okay, Stewart had played the part in a London stage production, and his version of the song is on his greatest hits collection. The original choice to play the Acid Queen was none other than David Bowie.
Oh,
I would have liked that better.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that would have really added the little extra weird. You know, Tina was just crazy, but if you saw David Bowie do it, yeah, I think it would have been different. But I do have to say, I really liked the Iron Maiden that she put him in. I don't know, it was kind of neat looking.
The futuristic Iron Maiden.
Yes, with all the needles and
The
stuff.
drug injecting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our third round, which is directing.
My first thoughts about 15 minutes into Tommy was this is what happens when you give a budget to a student film, because that is what it felt like to me.
Yep.
It just felt like someone making their thesis film or whatever, and they had a budget and were going off the rails. That being said, I think it gets better after it goes on for a little while. But I honestly think some of the visuals, although they don't really hold up like CGI wise, are kind of cool and like, you know, neat to watch. I loved the animation for the most part in The Wall. And I thought the cinematography and the shooting was much better in The Wall. Some of the choices for takes or the directions they gave to the actors in Tommy are just kind of baffling to me from watching it, trying to watch it as a film and not like a really long music video. It kind of felt like a bunch of buddies doing drugs and fucking around and making a movie. And The Wall, you know, had, I guess, more substance to it. Whether it came out any better is up for debate. But yeah, I just feel like they weren't getting the performances they needed to get from the people who weren't trained actors in the movie. And I think Tommy probably suffers the most from that because it doesn't have the animation interludes. And I think the music isn't as, I don't want to say good, but it's I feel like the music in The Wall carries you along better, and Tommy's more like you're watching every scene, they're singing right to you, so you have to kind of like, you can't just go with the flow of the movie, like you're listening to it like a musical, right? Or like, I don't know if that makes any sense, just the way it felt to me. But man, yeah, I think weird choices in both movies, and they both felt like really long music videos rather than actual, like movies. Do they do they make the material any better by making a movie of them? And I guess that's a better question for overall. But for me, I didn't feel like either of these particularly elevated like the source material.
Yeah, and you said, Kyle, that you felt like Tommy was like a student film. And I hope I'm not stealing any of Mike's trivia.
I know where you're going, and yes, you are. But go ahead.
But because it relates, the director of The Wall and Roger Waters had some differences during the making of it, and I think the director of The Wall was not very happy with the result. And according to this, it says he refers to the film as the most expensive student film ever made. And I can kind of agree with that to a certain extent. It did seem kind of like one of those things where, like, a student filmmaker is trying to find their way, and how can I tell, how can I portray an interesting, deep idea through imagery and that kind of thing, and kind of mostly failing in the process, but maybe learning a little something along the way. Maybe having a few cool images here and there, but really not getting their point across. And that's kind of the way I felt about The Wall. And I've seen The Wall before, at least parts of it, when I was younger, and I remembered in kind of enjoying it. But this time around, I didn't enjoy it as much. I felt like it was disjointed. I didn't feel like it really got the story across. And I had never seen Tommy, so I didn't know what to expect. But I felt like the story was clearer. But I didn't like the cinematography as much overall. It seemed more like kind of musical or TV movie kind of cinematography. There were some really nice shots here and there, like when he's running through the field of flowers and that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, that's a beautiful shot. That's really cool looking. But I felt like the cinematography in The Wall matched the mood better. And some of the cinematography was very beautiful, actually, in The Wall. So I don't know. I felt like in that respect, it was more professional than student, but not in storytelling. So I don't know. I guess I know. Not sure exactly where I'm going.
I agree with you. My two favorite shots in The Wall are the shot of the hotel hallway. And
the beginning shot,
yes,
where they're that slow dolly down the hallway. Yeah, that's pretty
shot.
Cool.
And I also love the shot of Pink sitting in the chair with the burnt out cigarette.
Yeah, with a super wide angle.
Yes.
It starts strong. It starts strong, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
and
it does.
And there are parts where I'm like, you can tell they were either in a hurry or they just didn't have time to set up, for some other shots that they were doing. But I totally agree with you. I feel it was the direction of photography and maybe the direction. It was just shot better in The Wall. And I feel, and after reading some of the credits of the director for Tommy, it was very much, and I don't want to say student film because I don't think it deserves that, but I would say more of a freestyle, maybe, just, oh, hey, we're on set. Let's do this. And hey, wouldn't this be crazy? Type of shots. And it does look very TV showish, which I'll go into. The director for Tommy, Ken Russell, has done a lot of TV movies, TV miniseries, TV shows in Britain. So it's kind of fitting. Like he kind of has an eye for that, I believe. And that's not saying it's a bad thing. That's just saying it's a different thing.
Mm-hmm. And it's it's well shot, and it's consistent. You know, the tone is consistent throughout. I just didn't find it all that compelling,
right,
compared to The Wall.
Right.
The Wall was very moody, very beautiful shots, whereas the Tommy was more functional. It's like we've got the shot.
Mm-hmm.
There were, like I said though, there were some exceptions where it's like, wow, that's a really beautiful shot. You know, but most of it was just kind of like, you know, let's get these actors in the scene singing their thing and make sure it's in focus.
Right.
And it's consistent. They did a good job of that.
I felt like on Tommy they kind of leaned real heavily, and a lot of 70s movies did this, leaned real heavily on the zoom.
Oh yes.
Mm-hmm.
God,
Yeah.
and it's just, they just cut, they just zoom, frame up the shot and keep the shot going. And I think nowadays all that stuff would get cut out because the zoom is like the one movement that they have that you don't replicate in real life at all. Pan shots, dolly shots, tilt shots, you do with your head and your legs and everything else. But a zoom is so unnatural and jarring. And Tommy did it all the freaking time. And there's some in the Wall too. And I mean, I know it's a characteristic of that time, but it completely drove me absolutely nuts. And you could tell that they were like, just keep the camera rolling and then zoom out and let's just zoom to a wide shot. And, and they took 3 shots and just used one continuous shot that just sucked ass.
I'm glad you brought that up, Tom. That's something that does bother me. When you were bringing up the 70s earlier, it does bother me. It seemed like that happened a lot in the 70s, that style of cinematography. And I don't know if it's because they were getting more powerful ones or if those were the only things that they had. Those were like, okay, this is the cheapest lens we can get, and it will give us all these options.
Right. Right. And I think, and it was something that, that was technology that came along in the mid 60s and, they started like, oh my gosh, we can zoom in on things in a single shot. And like, yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Right. So,
and even some of the greats do it. Like, Sergio Leone. I mean, there's a few zoom shots in his films. Everyone did it back then. It was just the way it was done, but it still kind of takes you out of it.
Right. And I'm not going to say against it altogether. I mean, J.J. Abrams uses a zoom, a couple zooms in Force Awakens, during the chase scenes and stuff because, it works in those situations, but, they just went a little crazy with it in the 70s, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Maybe, get high and like everything with marijuana, it softens it.
Well, and do you think maybe it had something to do with the equipment itself too? Because I imagine the cameras were bulky and hard to move, and it's
I'm sure of it. Yeah.
Sure, this is gonna be a hell of a lot easier if we just zoom here instead of trying to, put this on a crane or a dolly or something.
Yeah, right. And then the editor was just lazy and left the whole thing in.
That's true. That could happen. Yeah.
I may go through Tommy and just remove all the zooms, and I bet I come out with a masterpiece.
I wanted to mention real quick, Alan Parker, the director of The Wall, also did Midnight Express, Fame, Shoot the Moon. Let's see, Mississippi Burning,
Lolita,
Evita. Angela's Ashes, Life of David Gale.
Did he do Interview with Vampire?
He did not.
Really?
Yeah.
Who the hell directed Vampire?
And then the cinematographer for The Wall, let's see, did Life of Brian.
I give him credit for that.
Yeah. Hold on.
Not necessarily because of the cinematography.
Time Bandits.
Time Bandits.
Yeah. Let's see, 9.5 Weeks, A World Apart, Mississippi Burning, City of Joy, Damage, In the Name of the Father, The Road to Wellville, Truman Show, Unfaithful, Festival Express, Ladies in Lavender, and Derailed. So yeah, I mean, he's kind of had a pretty good career.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Truman Show would have been, I think, a little difficult to do. Just for...
I like that movie.
Yeah.
And it's kind of specialized too because they're trying to make it look like he's on a TV show.
Right.
That kind of,
Yeah. All right. Does anyone have anything else to add to the directing category?
I wonder how much. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just wonder how much better these movies would have been if they would have sat down with the creators and convinced them to sort of give a little bit of their vision over to, like, I don't want to say like more competent people, but like I just feel like if what you got out of Tommy was what you set out to make, that's one thing. But I just feel like it could have been done better. You know, if a better director or they would have had more planning go into it, because it did feel a little rushed in times. And like, you know, I think it just could have been better. And that's what leaves me a little bit sour on it is, you know, the music to me is sort of interesting, but I just don't feel like it was executed very well.
Well, and here's the thing too, is, you know, we're watching a film from 75. We're really far removed from that date. You know, that's 42 years. Well, it will be, 42 years ago. And it's just different for us. And I mean, even back then, it probably would have been different. But it could have probably been more forgiving. I don't know, because that's what you were used to. Yeah. You know, it's always hard. You know, whenever we do these films that are farther back from us, it's always hard to get ourselves in the mindset of when they came out. And that's one thing I always try to say is we kind of have to look at it. And I know Gabe has mentioned this, you know, you kind of have to look at it from, not from 2017 Mike, but, you know, try and look at it from 1975 Mike. I still would have found it weird. I guess. I don't know. I can't say, but no, I agree with that though.
Okay,
that's a really long way of me saying that I agree with you.
Do you feel like you have to make that same exception if you watch something like a Hitchcock film, which is much older, but, you know, I don't watch those movies and think like, oh, I have to imagine it's the 50s or the 60s. To me, they're stories that are well told by someone who's, you know, a very good director.
No, you have,
and so it still translate.
You have a very good point. That's a great point. But also, you're talking, you know, 60s and 70s mainly, like what seems to be the theme of this category. You know, they were really they were really going weird places with film.
Yeah.
You know,
and we're talking about a band, you know, trying to get their music put to a video and not, you know, it wasn't designed to be made into a movie,
right?
You know, to start. So it's very different material.
And, you know, you're just talking about kind of a weird experimental phase for filmmaking was the 70s. Yeah. In my opinion, you know, like everyone that saw, you know, that were talking about Star Wars before they saw it, they thought it was going to flop because it was too much like the old 50s serials, you know, the 1950 running around space serials, and look at it, like it changed everything. And of course, like Tom said, we got, you know, Spielberg and Lucas, and we got a ton of great directors out of the 70s, but I think they were maybe fighting back against the, I don't want to say absurdness, but the experimentation of the 70s. You know, they kind of took us back to the more of the ground rules of filmmaking. Does that make sense or no?
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
So yeah, Tosh has fallen asleep. He hasn't said anything this round.
What is there to say? I mean, it's right. They were both student-run movies, and it's yeah. I don't need to make this podcast any longer than it is. People.
All right, let's go ahead and vote, Kyle.
Boy, this one is actually more difficult for me than I thought, but I'm going to go with The Wall because, in just basically for the 10 or 15 minutes it starts, I think are just beautiful and really cool. After that, I think it's kind of downhill, but I enjoyed that the most.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with The Wall too because of the whole crazy Zoom thing on Tommy. So,
Gabe.
Well, I'm going to have to echo the same sentiments. I'm going to go with The Wall, in part because I think the cinematography is better. I'm not sure the storytelling is better, but I think the director's hands were tied a little bit with their conflict with Roger Waters and that kind of thing. So I don't blame them too much in that respect.
All right, and Tosh.
Man, I love that zoom in on Tommy. Whew, that was good.
Yeah, I thought you might.
Do you think they got a camera and it's like, look, we can zoom. We should use that. It's like just over and over again. No, we'll go with The Wall.
All right. Let's see here. Directing. George Lucas was actually offered the chance to direct Tommy in the early 70s, but turned it down because he was developing American Graffiti. Ken Russell was
I wonder
what
that would look like. A George Lucas Tommy.
What would that? Yeah,
I don't know.
You think Jar Jar Binks is in there?
Go go and watch THX 1138.
And that's Tommy.
It's well, I'm not saying it's Tommy,
That's
but
funny.
it's different. It's a student film. Ken Russell was said to have a bullwhip during the directing of this movie. It doesn't say whether or not he whipped anyone, but
whip position,
like
literally.
he
used a
because it
bullwhip.
looked like he got one take out of everybody
Right.
and said, "Moving on."
All right. Director Alan Parker. So this kind of goes with what Gabe said. Director Alan Parker walked out on The Wall many times, probably due to an ego clash with Roger Waters. Waters was annoyed at Parker, who did not like the way that he wanted to make it a cult film. The song Not Now, John on Pink Floyd's next album, The Final Cut, contains the following lyrics written by Waters. Not now, John. We got to get on with the film show. Hollywood waits at the end of the rainbow. Who cares what it's about as long as the kids go? So not now, John. I've got to go. I got to get on with the show. And Parker refers to The Wall as the most expensive student film ever made. All right.
Other than Tommy, I don't know. I don't know what the budget was.
I think The Wall's budget was $12 million, if I read it right.
Jesus,
really
correct.
And Tommy was like 5, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, $12 million.
Most of that is Roger Daughtry's accident insurance.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
Let's move on to fourth and final round, which is overall.
Oh, there's so much left to say about these movies. Yeah, not really. I don't really have anything else to say. I mean, we usually talk about music here, but we kind of covered a lot of that. I kind of just want to go back to my point about that. I don't think movies were the best form of media that these two stories should have taken on. Pink Floyd, I was thinking about it. Pink Floyd should have actually looked at a painting and stuck all of their symbolism into a nice painting. I think that would have been quite nice and summed up everything. And I think we'd be sitting here comparing the Tommy stage show to Pink Floyd's The Wall painting. and I'd have an hour and a half of my life.
It'd be high art smack.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. So
Coming in 2018 for you future downloaders.
Write that down. Art
So
snack.
I don't, I know people, and I'm related to people who really love The Wall, and they swear up and down that it's better if you're high. In my experience, marijuana makes me very sleepy, and this movie made me very sleepy. So I don't really see how being doubly sleepy makes
Tommy
sense.
wants sleepy.
Yeah. So,
Are you good at pinball?
you know what? I am actually really good at pinball, and I love pinball. And obviously, Tommy, when I was younger, it stuck out to me. Somebody's like, "Hey, they did a whole album called Tommy," and I'm like, "Well, I gotta check this out." And I love pinball, and I like the story and everything else behind it. I just felt like the execution on Tommy was just awful, and it made me sad. Because I was really excited because I love The Who and I love Pink Floyd, and I was really excited about watching these two movies, and I am so incredibly disappointed in both of them that I really doubt I'll ever watch either one of these again.
Unless
the
you
best
get
part,
high.
the best part of the movie, honestly, was the start of the credits. So,
Hey, Tom.
I saw those credits roll, and I was like, I had tears.
Phew.
Tom, what's your favorite pinball machine?
My pinball machine's World Cup Soccer, like circa 1990,
Yeah.
with the dog on it.
Yep.
I love World Cup Soccer.
Yep.
And my cousin owns it, and I like playing it on his machine. So
Nice.
that's my favorite one because I really have a really good idea of all of the bonuses and what the whole point is. There's some pinball machines that are overly complicated, but yeah, World Cup Soccer is my favorite one. I think it's a Gottlieb machine. So
Mine is Adam's Family. I enjoy that one a lot.
ooh, I see that one around quite a bit. That must be pretty popular.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what? I think it's funny. I think my cousin has two machines, and I think it's Adam's Family and World's Cup. That's hilarious.
Mhm.
If true.
You can watch us or listen to us on Pinball Smack coming in 2018.
Sister podcast.
Yeah, I think we didn't necessarily talk about the animation a lot. We did mention it in passing, but we didn't necessarily talk about it very much. And I have to say, one of my favorite parts of The Wall was the animation.
Mm-hmm.
I think if the whole movie had been done that way, I think I might have enjoyed it more. In certain ways, the animation seemed very primitive. But you think about the tools they had available to them and what they were trying to do with that animation, and I thought that was one of the few things that worked really well, was that animation, and how it was so overtly kind of like sexualized and just kind of strange and creepy, but I felt like I got more out of that than I did any of the live action parts of The Wall. I didn't really feel like much was happening, or I didn't know what was happening in the live action parts. But I got the animation thing, and maybe it's because when I saw the animation, I was automatically ready to think of it metaphorically, think of it abstractly, as opposed to the live action stuff. I start out anyway automatically thinking, oh, this is I take this literally. Mm-hmm. But then when I see the animation, it's like, okay, well, I don't necessarily take this literally. This is not realistic. So I'm looking for the symbolism and the meaning in it. And I think I enjoyed that part of The Wall. And Tommy featured a little bit of like animation, right?
I think
they had more visual effects. They had some interesting visual effects.
I think it was visual effects via animation on a few things, but not a lot.
Yeah, and they had some fun kind of production value to it. They had some fun set decoration and props and those kinds of things in Tommy. But yeah, I really do feel like I enjoyed the animation more, and I feel like The Wall could have been a stronger movie had it been almost primarily animation. And maybe what you do is you start out with a little bit of live action and you show these characters, and then you go into their heads, and when you're in their heads, it's that animation, and then when you come back out of it, maybe it's back to live action or something. I don't know. But
I've always loved the animation of The Wall. Like I'm with you. That's one of my favorite parts. I love empty spaces. The whole two flowers going around with each other, and essentially it's showing. It's supposed to be two people, essentially doing
romance,
right? Doing romance, as Tosh would say, and. I just love how the one turns on the other one, and that's like how he was feeling, that his wife was turning on him, and but I love the hammers. I don't know why, but I love the symbolism of the hammers. The marching and everything. And I'm like, I know it's like fascism, and I know it's horrible, but I just love that animation of the hammers. Like, I just think it's
that's very cool.
It's very cool symbolism.
And they did some kind of rudimentary rotoscoping in some of the war scenes and stuff, which wasn't necessarily that great, but it worked.
And I mean, the part with the eagle flying, the Fat Man turning into the machine of war, and it's just really. And I think you may be right, you know, Gabe. It could be that the animation is the strong part, but I love the trial. I don't know why. I love the theatricalness of it, and I have a great track of the trial, and it's when Roger Waters performed it in Berlin, live in Berlin, I think in 1990, and it had he had these different actors come on and play those different parts. Like one played the wife, one played the mom, one played the judge. Tim Curry was the prosecutor. Thomas Dolby was the schoolmaster. Mariana Faithfull was the mother. Albert Finney was the judge. And
so this is like a video, like a live video.
It's a live show that they did in Berlin.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. But I'll let someone else talk. But I really do like the animation in The Wall.
So I think Gabe brings up a good point. I'm going to echo that too. I think the animation would have been a much better movie than what we got out of The Wall. My favorite way to partake in my Floyd is laser light show Floyd. You know, very rarely when someone is incredibly talented at one thing, like Roger Waters and the Who are, right? They're like world class rock stars. Very rarely when they turn their hand to something else does it come out well. It's rare to find someone who is equally talented at two different art forms. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing is people with a strong vision and ego are trying their hand at something else and not being able to pull it off. Part of that, I think, comes with some of this felt very self-centered and egotistical in places. And I'm not sure how much control they're willing to give up to other people who have different ideas. But I think if we would have gotten an animated version of The Wall, I would have enjoyed that a lot more than the live action stuff we saw. My problems with a lot of it were, like I said earlier, the metaphors were either so obtuse that you couldn't make sense, like you needed to have the personal experience or be in Roger Waters' head to understand what they were about, or they were as elegant as a man with no eyebrows yelling at a room full of people dressed like a Nazi. Which is not very elegant. But the kid put a box on his head and walked around in a circle on the beach. I mean, that stuff is just kind of laughable as a storytelling device. But I tried to dig really hard to like find things I liked about this. I think the animation is still probably my favorite part. I just enjoy stuff like that. I think the music in The Wall is better. I just like Pink Floyd more. But Pinball Wizard is a pretty badass track. And I give Tina Turner credit for going absolutely bonkers, like she must have been on a pound of yak and just gone absolutely nuts. Because she was, I mean, terrifying. But Roger Daughtry's goofy face just killed it for me. Killed it. I could not get into the movie because he's got these very expressive blue, like, well, not expressive, they're blank as shit, but they're like very striking blue eyes. And he's just constantly staring forward, and it just ruined it. I got to give Anne Margaret credit though, because she really is trying to fucking act. Whether she can do it or not is up to you. But she did win a Golden Globe.
She's so hot.
She's pretty hot. No, Gabe, I don't think you brought up your point about the eyes.
Yeah, somebody mentioned it, but didn't really bring it up. That's one thing that bothered me about Tommy. Is that the kid when he was Tommy as a child was. I don't know. He was kind of a brown-haired, but definitely brown-eyed kid. And when we make the transition between him as a child and him as a little bit older, it's basically a close-up of his eyes, and then it switches over to Roger Daltrey's face, and you're like, who the hell is that? Because that guy has, like Kyle said, that guy has striking, very noticeable blue eyes. And it does not match up at all with the kid. And I'm like, is that supposed to be the kid? And then you realize later, oh, yeah, that's Tommy. But he doesn't look anything like he used to. All of a sudden, he's got like this ridiculously curly hair. And he's got striking blue eyes. What happened to that kid? You know? And I felt like that was a major oversight. Like, that's not hard it couldn't have been that hard to find a kid who kind of looked like him, as a child. It couldn't have been that hard.
I just feel like maybe that's endemic of them just not caring. Like maybe they just don't care about that.
Yeah, maybe that wasn't even a concern at all. I don't know.
And now that you mention that, is it possible we're watching a movie where people who serially adopt and take care of children with sensory deprivation problems? So maybe that was a different child in the beginning, and then they find Roger Daughtry as an adult and like take him in as an adult. No, I've gone too far. Okay.
Yeah.
Thought it was going to be funny. I fucked it up. Moving on.
Yeah. No, I thought that was a major oversight.
All right. Does anyone want to add anything else to overall? I mean, I believe we've exhausted the music, the animation, the direction, the acting, which is, I agree with you guys, subpar.
I wish for that 4 hours back for my life. That's all.
I will be
206 minutes.
Yeah, I will be glad to take more of those hours from your life. Tom.
Yes.
Let's vote.
We're voting. I'm gonna go Tommy because I feel like I might watch Tommy again just out of because I want to see the stage show, and I like the music in Tommy better than the stuff. I mean, Pink Floyd stuff's pretty good too, though. That's a good question. Come back to me.
All right, Gabe.
Yeah. Well, when Tommy first started, when I first started watching it, I'm like, oh, well, I'm enjoying this a little bit more. I might come back to it. I might actually watch it again. And then I'm like, oh my God, it is going on and on and on. Will it ever end? Please end. So I probably won't come back to it because it's like it was good for a little while, but like almost a full 2 hours is way too much. And I like Pink Floyd better. I enjoyed the animation in The Wall. I'm going to give my vote to The Wall.
All right, Tosh.
I'm giving my vote to Despicable Me. Oh wait, that was last.
Oh wait, that's
that's last month. We'll go with The Wall. Yeah, both of them suck, but Wall sucked less.
Once again, pleasure having you on the podcast, Tosh. Kyle.
I'm tempted to give Elton John a sympathy vote because I think you really had some fun. But I got to go with The Wall. I simply enjoyed it more.
All right, Tom.
Then I'm I'm gonna have to go with Tommy. It's just I'm a story guy, and I just don't feel. I was actually surprised when I clicked on plot on Wikipedia and read the plot after I saw the movie to make sure I got everything right. That there were words. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Tommy.
And not just a question mark.
Not just like, I don't know, this guy's rock star, he's fucked up. I'd like to point out it is the plot of November Rain. So
yeah, all right.
Or Don't Cry, is it Don't Cry? One of the Guns N' Roses videos. So they probably stole it and went back in time and stole it.
Much more likely than Guns N' Roses ripping it off.
Yes. I don't even know where to go from here. In The Wall, many of the extras in Run Like Hell and Waiting for the Worm sequences were actual neo-Nazis cast for realism. Gerald Scarfe became frightened that things were getting out of control when on one day during filming, several of them showed up with the double hammer insignia shaved into the sides of their heads. Later, the fascist group did spring up in the late 1980s, dubbed the Hammerskins, with this logo as their insignia, much to the dismay of Scarfe, Parker, and Waters, whose intentions were to make the portrayal anti-fascist. So like I said, I love the look of the hammers, but I just know that it's being taken over by the fascists. We discussed the beans and the soap and the chocolate. And I think we all agree the soap was much better. But
the soap should have come later to clean that shit off.
Yeah.
They did it backwards.
But let's see. Russell recalled that Anne Margaret's husband objected to her rolling around in the chocolate and that she cut her hand badly on the glass of the TV screen and he had to take her to the hospital to have her hand stitched, but she was back on set the next day. Now, it's kind of funny that that's in there because Bob Geldof managed to cut open his hand badly during the scene in which his character destroys his hotel room. To the astonishment of the crew, Geldof refused medical attention until director Alan Parker had the scene wrapped up. So I just find it funny that
Dedicated.
both of them cut their hands while acting batshit crazy, destroying stuff.
That's what happened.
Imagine that. That's
Could have warned you.
shouldn't do that. Shouldn't roll around.
Still surprised the injury news isn't about the lead singer of the Who. Who is crazy.
Yeah, I know. That is surprising.
All right. We have some listener feedback that I would like to get to before we go to our recommendations.
What?
And that. We actually have some listener feedback. Yes.
We have listeners?
Hello.
Let me guess. You need to feature Tom and Tosh more. Is that what it says?
Actually, it has no mention of Tosh in this. It says, "Hello, Tom, Gabe, and Kyle. I just listened to the."
I like this guy.
I will actually forward this to you. I am not
I believe
kidding.
you. I believe you.
I just listened to the Alien versus Predator episode, and I hadn't laughed that hard in a while. Thank you. Also, I think the new working title for your Alien concept film should be titled "The Stowaway," with a tagline of "In space, no one can get your Lucky Charms." I don't know what that's. Finally, while
Because the alien was stealing cereal. Remember
That's
we were
right.
talking about him being
That's
a bad
right.
roommate.
Right.
finally, while listing off the films by Ridley Scott, I got an idea for an epic cinesmack, which would put Legend up against the movie Willow, which actually doesn't sound too bad. Your most mediocre fan, Dennis from Des Moines. So there you go. All right. So I asked you guys to come with your 3 favorite bands because this was kind of I had wanted to put these 2 together because these are 2 out of my 3 favorite bands. So let's go ahead and start. We'll start with Gabe and go ahead and tell us your 3 favorite bands, Gabe.
Okay, these are not necessarily in order, and I do like Pink Floyd, but they're not among my top favorites.
That's fine.
My favorite bands are Tool,
Nice.
Soundgarden,
Nice.
and Nine Inch Nails. I'm kind of a hard rocker, heavy metal guy, and I have to give a shout out to
very 90s.
Trent Reznor for contributing some of his great music to soundtracks these days and doing an excellent job of it.
Yeah.
Winning Oscars and stuff, I think. Didn't he win an Oscar for one of the David Fincher
it-
ones?
I believe he did.
The girl with the dragon tattoo.
Or was it Social Network? I can't remember.
Oh, I
which
can't.
one.
Probably Social Network.
I'll look it
can't
up
remember.
for you. I'll look it up.
Yeah, but anyway, those would be among my top favorite bands right now.
All right. Tosh.
Are we doing your favorite album too? Wasn't
That's
that
going
one
to be
prior?
for your recommendation.
Oh, okay. Mine are Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and New Kids on the Block.
I am not surprised.
Nice.
You have a theme.
Yeah. All
Boy
boys.
bands.
No, okay.
They're so hot.
No, really, it's. I've been listening to this a lot more since his death. Linkin Park. I've always been a Linkin Park fan. Oasis.
Wow,
Love Oasis.
really?
And the one that doesn't fit with the other ones, Eminem.
Wow.
Yep.
Interesting.
Very diverse.
Wow. It is very diverse. All right, Kyle.
I'm going to have a little less diversity here, I think, but that's okay. So I was going to say my favorite 3 bands kind of rotate quite a bit depending on what I'm listening to. But if you have to go all time for bands that have meant the most to me over the years, I got to do Pantera. It was a huge part of my teenage years. Mostly the earlier stuff, but I really like Stained. And I know they've become kind of a joke after Outside, but they used to be like a really good hard band. I still like them now. And then my one that's not like the others is Garth Brooks.
That is totally one not like the
Yeah,
other.
it's very different.
I actually really like Garth Brooks. As a kid, Thunder Roll scared the shit out of me because I knew something bad happened.
Right.
And I don't think any movie's ever made me feel as sad as The Dance or Unanswered Prayers. Those are really sad.
Yeah,
The Dance gets you every time.
it does.
Oh my God. It's the
I'm pretty sure
saddest
I
song I've
slow
ever heard.
danced to that in junior high dance.
Mine rotate quite a bit. But the ones that come up the most, and I can always rely on a good song to listen to them, I would say is Red Hot Chili Peppers, U2, and probably because I just saw them, I'd say Green Day, but Guns N' Roses and Green Day kind of switch in and out of there. So
Huh. That's very 80s and 90s of you.
it is. It's in my wheelhouse. And
Yeah.
But you know what? They're all still putting shit out. So, I like that they're still making good music.
Now, I have different categories just because I can't make up my mind. So, like, I have my 90s, my favorite bands from the 90s, my favorite bands from the 80s. But I think overall, my holy trinity of music, if I was stuck on an island, what albums would I want? It would definitely be Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, and The Who. For me, David Gilmour, Jimmy Page, and Pete Townsend are just guitar gods.
Can't believe Stabbing Westward isn't on there.
Stabbing Westward is 90s, man. That's 90s. Stabbing Westward, Collective Soul, Stone Temple Pilots. Let's find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner by decision is Pink Floyd, The Wall.
I asked you guys to give your recommendations for this month, and instead of doing film, I asked you guys to give your favorite album. So we'll start it off with you, Tom.
I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to say Use Your Illusion Volumes 1 and 2.
Really?
From Guns N'
You're kinda
Roses. That
cheating
is...
there.
Yeah, they've got those Don't Cry, November Rain, and Estranged trilogy that just is awesome. And then You Could Be Mine's got to have some of the best drums ever that I can almost play, and yeah. So that's how Guns N' Roses gets on my list. What?
You Could Be Mine is pretty wicked.
It's pretty freaking awesome. Yeah. It's pretty awesome. And I got to tell you, my backup was a Mumford & Sons album. So, I mean, I really run the gamut.
Well, it's funny. November Rain, I remember listening to both those albums continuously on a vacation that I went on with my youth group to the Grand Tetons. And I think those were the only two albums that someone brought with them. So we listened to November Rain over and over and over.
It's a great song. I remember Headbangers Ball when Ricky Rackman unveiled the video for the first time, and it was just an amazing moment, and it's my Challenger explosion.
Wow, Kyle.
Too soon?
Too soon, Nami.
I think you're good. It's probably 30 years now. Okay. I'm gonna you never forget your first. My first was Crisscross, Totally Crossed Out. So go back and give that one a listen. Jump is still a good song, followed by I Miss the Bus, my second favorite. But if you want to listen to an album now that kind of runs the gamut of different musical styles, is a little experimental as well, check out a band called I Wrestled a Bear Once, which got their name from something Gary Busey said on TV. So I like that story too.
All right. Thanks, Kyle.
That's the name of the band?
Yeah, I wrestled a bear once. My favorite album of theirs is called Late for Nothing. When they come to, I think their last album is just more kind of straight heavy metal, but their first, or not their first album, but Late for Nothing is a lot more experimental stuff. I like that.
All right, Tosh.
I'm gonna go with a different album as well. I'm gonna go Flood by They May Be Giants.
Nice.
They Might Be Giants. Excuse me. Yep. Particle Man. Classic.
I love that song.
That whole CD is just fantastic. It makes me smile, and that's always a good thing. So yep.
Yeah.
Did you see the British Children's Choir singing Birdhouse in Your Soul?
Yes. Yep. I did.
Whenever
Yeah.
I get grumpy, I put that on and it cheers me up every single time. Actually, that's not true. I tried doing that after watching these movies. It didn't work.
Oh, Gabe.
I'm going to go with another kind of story theme album, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time, and it still holds up today, and the guitar playing is fantastic. I'm going to go with Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche. And man, I remember the first time I listened to that.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Did you just say Empire by Queensryche?
Oh, Operation Mindcrime is the
okay.
name of the album.
All right, I'm sorry.
By Queensryche. And it's a story album. It's a concept album, and it is just, I think it's just fantastic. It has such uplifting hits as "I Don't Believe in Love" and "Eyes of a Stranger," "Spreading the Disease," and "The Needle Lies." Those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's maybe not the most uplifting of albums, but it's really a well done album, and I think it still holds up today as a hard rock, heavy metal kind of story album. So if you've never listened to it, you should check it out. I remember the first time I listened to it, I was maybe a little too young, and it sounded very subversive and kind of anti-government and that kind of stuff, and it actually kind of scared me a little bit. And I remember I listened to it, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know, maybe the government knows I listened to this. Maybe I shouldn't.
Well,
and
they
I
do
put
now.
it away. Well, they absolutely do now. Come take it away from me. It's like my guns in this album. Come take them. But now, later on, I picked it up on a whim and listened to it again. I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. This is really brilliant stuff. So
yeah, that's a good album. Sorry, I was reading some info here, and I swore you said Empire. I'm like, oh my god, but you outdid yourself with that one. I love that album too. It's a good pick.
Cool.
All right, so mine is back in 94. I started on the radio down at KDPS in the Des Moines Public Schools. And I was pretty much, I knew who Twisted Sister was. Like, I kind of knew heavy metal 80s bands, but mainly I was brought up on country and Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, kind of the swing music. So I consider 94, 95, it was like my music awakening. And the girlfriend that I had at the time, she introduced me to Pink Floyd, and her dad had all the albums on vinyl, and I absolutely loved it. Like, we would go to her house, swing in the hammock, and listen to Pink Floyd, and there were no drugs, no anything else involved, just listening to this music that I had never heard before. And I was so upset that I didn't get to see them in concert when they came through Ames in 94. Like, I was just a month late, and I still remember going to Best Buy and buying the single on cassette tape from this album, and the single was Take It Back. And I used to drive my dad's truck. All it had was an AM radio, so I had a little portable cassette player in there, and I would listen to my tapes. And one of them, I listened to that song over and over until I finally bought the album. And that album is The Division Bell by Pink Floyd. A lot of people kind of thumb their nose at it, like other Pink Floyd fans, because it does not have Roger Waters. They consider everything after Roger Waters to not be Pink Floyd. But even though I think he has a distinctive voice, I prefer David Gilmour's voice. When you guys were listening to Comfortably Numb, Waters and Gilmour sing essentially a duet of that song. One sings and then the other sings. I prefer Gilmour's tone and his vocals. It has, I think, in my mind, this album I could turn into a movie. I don't know if it'd be any better than The Wall or Tommy, but I have this idea of scripting out, going through this live. It starts out with Cluster 1, which is all instrumental, but What Do You Want From Me pulls apart Maroon, Great Day for Freedom, Wearing Inside Out, Take It Back, which at the time, and I still kind of think it's true, you know, essentially it's about a female taking her love back from you. You know, if you don't treat her well, she's going to take it back. And I also think it's a good metaphor for, well, back then, and I still kind of do, for Mother Earth. You know, you got to kind of treat it better. Otherwise, it's going to take it back. It's going to take everything back. It's kind of weird. Coming back to life, keep talking, lost for words. And the song that I want played at my funeral, which is called High Hopes. And essentially, it's a song that Gilmore and Sampson wrote about the band, the members of Pink Floyd, and how they've all grown apart. And it really kind of hits you. Almost being 40, I look back to all my high school friends, and the song kind of hits home. You know, how you just kind of grow apart from each other. So I would recommend highly The Division Bell. And I went on way too wrong, way too long. Sorry. Let's move on to
Pink Floyd smack coming
2018. Let's move on to our where people can find you, hunt you down, and play a song for you. I don't know if that works. It's really hot in this room. Gabe.
You can find me on Facebook, or you can check out our films from the 48-Hour Film Project on onegenomeshort.com.
Oh, you know what? I need to mention this. Congratulations to One Genome Short. You guys won the Audience Choice Award for your screening group.
We did, yes. Thank you.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks.
My mic was off, and I technically congratulated you before Mike did.
That doesn't count.
We know.
I believe you.
It's true.
All right, Tosh.
You can find me on the Twitters. Just search for Tosh Dillinger. Or you can go to our website, onegenomeshort.com, because we have to plug it twice. Everything's nice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, Kyle.
I don't think that's how the saying goes. You have to play it twice. Everything's nice.
I said plug it twice.
Plug it twice. Oh, okay.
Still
if you plug it, never mind. You know what? I'm going to leave if you plug it twice alone. I already got one explicit tag. You can find me on Facebook if you want to, but I don't know why. I'm not a very good friend.
Tom?
People can generally find me dropping British students into my meat grinder and then spraying neo-Nazis with the juices while I swipe Ann Margaret's Walmart jewelry. Also,
I thought that was you.
Yeah, it was me. Yeah. So I was a stunt hand while I swiped her jewelry.
I'd be a stunt hand for Ann Margaret.
Yeah. So,
and the and the British students are all grass fed. So we're thinking organic. Organic here, nice. People. Organic. So
I love farm to table British kids. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. If you want, I'd be happy to tell you the name of the child you're eating right now.
I'm going to leave that one alone too.
Okay.
Oh my God. Now I know why it's so hot in here. My register's closed. I'm burning up inside the office. All right. I'm not even drinking anything. I'm drinking water. We would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on iTunes or whatever podcasting service you use. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I have a website, but there's really nothing on it. And for September, remember the Titans and We Are Marshall meet on the gridiron. For Tom, Kyle, Gabe, Tosh, and myself, thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
We don't need no education.
Shut up.
We don't need no thought control.
Oh, God, I hate you all.
He's a pinball wizard!
It sounded like a guitar playing chicken.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.